What's up, everybody? My name is Billy Boozer, and welcome back to the Everyday Hustle podcast. Today, I've got a really great guest, Matt Jaeh, and I'm super excited to have him. But before we jump into that, I want to tell you a little bit about HustleMob. You can go to HustleMob.com, and HustleMob is a place for merchants and early stage businesses to get better services for selling their products and goods. And so we use NFC tags and enable people to be able to sell items, invoice people in a more easy way at the earliest stage of businesses. Most of these early stage businesses don't have great tools for being able to sell their products. And so we make sure we focus on that point of sale, that point of purchase, and make it a better experience for your customers. So go over to hustlemob.com, go ahead and pre-register, and I appreciate all the support. Today on the Everyday Hustle podcast, I've got Matt Jaeh, and Matt is a longtime friend. We've known each other for many years, back in the ProctorU days when he was killing it with that product and when it was struggling at times. I'm just super excited to bring him on because he's a great technologist that I've had a lot of respect for. He mentors a lot of friends of mine, and they have so much respect for him that it's always translated to me as well. So Matt, let me get a quick intro for me. Tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Billy. I really appreciate you having me on. And likewise, man, friends with you for quite a while. And I really respect you and your journey and everything that you've gone through as well. I mean, it's just an incredible, I love hearing your story and being able to share your story with others. So it's really, really cool. So a little bit about me. Went to school, University of Florida. So go Gators. That's my allegiance. I went there, graduated, with a degree in computer science and engineering, but I really wanted to be a rock star. So I moved out to LA with the band, and I gave it my best shot. It didn't turn out quite the way I wanted, but in the end, I learned a lot of stuff. I was in a couple different startups, one in particular with my buddy, Jarrod Morgan, and we founded this company called ProctorU. ProctorU is an online company that basically enables people to take exams from anywhere they are in the world. And we started that one over a decade ago. And in 2020, we both had a great exit from that company. And so ever since then, I really wanted to dedicate my time to just giving back, and just helping as many founders as I possibly could. And it's been an awesome ride since then. So what I did is I got involved with, I'm living here in Birmingham, Alabama, which is a great place, by the way. Started working with a company called Innovation Depot. I was the entrepreneur in residence in their velocity and voltage programs. I started working with EDPA, Alabama Launchpad. I worked with the city of Pelham on economic development, and that eventually led me to Techstars. And so with Techstars, Nate and Brooke, who were running the program in 2022, they heard about me and said, "Hey, would you like to become the entrepreneur residence for us?" And I was like, "Okay, that sounds cool. I want to give that a shot. I would love to, be able to help your founders." And when I got into the program, this was in September of 2022. I really fell in love with just how they truly did put founders first, and they gave everything, all this passion to this whole process, and I just fell in love with it. And so by the time this was done with my cohort of 10, working with Techstars in December of 2022, Nate, who's the managing director of the Techstars here, said, "Hey, I'm getting promoted. I love the work that you did with our cohort, and I think you would make a great managing director. I definitely encourage you to apply for it." And you know what? I was just like, sure. I mean, it sounds like a great opportunity. It's right up the alley of what I've been doing, and what you guys did was fantastic. So it was just it was no brainer. I hate to use that word, no brainer, but it really was. It truly was. And so I applied for it, I got it. And so what I'm doing now is I'm the managing director of Techstars here in Birmingham. And so just on my way to try to source and find 12 of the best and brightest energy tech, climate tech companies that I possibly can, give them some mentorship, some guidance, some help, and hopefully they become wildly successful. So
yeah,
that's a little bit about
No,
I
I
love
mean,
to.
it's funny. We've got a weird overlay. So, like, my first experience meeting you was at ProctorU as a consultant, trying to come there and I think sell basically advertising and web services. And
Yeah.
I got to meet you, and you guys were in the middle of, shoring up a Flash app that was like, holding on, and it was such an impressive thing because in Birmingham at that time, you didn't see startups that, or at least like companies that were classified to a certain extent as startups, but also had like 500 employees across the United States in call centers and remote test proctoring centers. And like you walk into this space and there's just all these people that are just sitting there, watching other people taking tests and making sure that they're not cheating on tests or making sure that they've got everything and all the support that they need doing it. And it was like super impressive, but it was also a startup at the same time, and most people in Birmingham in that area didn't even know much about ProctorU. I think I had randomly run into maybe Jarrod or somebody, I can't remember who it was, and they had brought us in, and it was just so cool to see, that scale of startup in the Birmingham area. And I know you guys had a few offices across the country, one in California, I think one in like Utah or Nevada or something like that. And
Yeah.
it was just really neat. I mean, so I don't know, it was one of my first experiences getting to walk into a startup that was trying to scale and trying to figure out what it looked like to go to that next kind of like Series B world, and I know there was a lot of trials and tribulations after that. And I know that you guys finally sold the business after making it hugely successful. So tell me about, like, before we get to ProctorU, what did you do? What was your kind of like life experience up to doing a startup? I mean, had you tried to do that before, or was it all the band and the graduating college? Was that the focus at the time?
Yeah, no, my kind of entrepreneur journey started with my parents. When I was 10 years old, my dad comes up to me and says, "Son, you're 10 years old now. In 6 years, you're gonna want to have a car. And so here's $100. You can spend it on Nintendo games or whatever that may be. But I would recommend that you save it and you start finding ways so that you can make that money to have that car when you're 16." And I
Mm-hmm.
thought about that and I was like, oh man, okay, well, now I know what the game is. I need to get to work. And so I was always into computers, into technology. And back in this time period, putting together a computer was pretty expensive and it was pretty difficult for most people. There just wasn't that much. There was no internet at the time. And so, you had to rely on magazines and publications and trade shows and stuff like that. So I like being into technology. I was building computers when I was like 10 years old, programming and so forth. And so I started to make it a business of mine to go out and repair computers, build computers and so forth for friends, family, people in the neighborhood, in addition to the standard mowing your grass, shoveling snow and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I was always trying to like make money, and I would make the most money, like, doing the computer thing. So I started working early on, but when I could officially get a job, I started work at this Japanese restaurant called Yamato's in Pensacola. I
Mm-hmm.
started off as like a dishwasher at 14. My mom had to drive me to work. She hated that, but she did it anyway. And then eventually you had friends that, you'd hire your friends and they'd work there. And then I worked my way up there to become a hibachi chef. That was pretty awesome because I was like the youngest hibachi chef like ever. That was this incredible opportunity. And through that type of job, man, I was making pretty darn good money,
Yeah.
as just a high school kid. But then when I went to college, I knew that I didn't want to necessarily do that in college while I was trying to study. So I heard about this thing called the A plus CompTIA A plus computer certification, and so I picked up a book about it. I studied it, and I was able to pass that certification test in the course of a weekend because my background in technology enabled me to do that. And so I became a certified computer technician, and I started to look for jobs while I was in Gainesville. And I picked up a computer tech job that led me to Best Buy and Geek Squad. Like the biggest place there in Gainesville at the time was Best Buy, and they were just starting this thing up called Geek Squad. They just acquired this company and they were starting to roll it out. And I wanted to be part of that because I'd heard about Geek Squad, and I was like, oh, this is a really cool business model. I love the whole computer agents, and like they just this whole culture of secret agents, double agents, and like the uniforms and the badges and the cars and everything. It's just cool. I was like, this is cool. This is right up my alley. And so I got into that organization and just helped roll it out from its inception, started to grow. And all the while I was doing the college thing, I was in the music, and that was on the professional side. But then on like the music side, that was like one of the first real business kind of situations that I was starting from scratch. You have your product, which is music. It's a services-based business because you're providing a service. And so you have to really learn to dig into that aspect of, providing great service, consistent service, quality, and being able to market your product and to go to all these things, negotiate deals. And so learned a lot about business through being in a band. And I made my first biggest business mistake when I graduated from college, and was like, I'm going to take this band and go to LA because I'm going to abandon my market of all the people and customers and fans that I'd acquired and all the connections to think that I can go to LA, a bigger market, not really know that much people, and do all that again there. Like that
Yeah.
was the first biggest like business mistake that I ever made. I mean, hindsight, learning that mistake was worth it. But if I would have stayed with the band, we would have continued along the South and just continued to work the same kinds of shows, efforts. We would have been, picked up, discovered. But then again, who knows? It was a hard time for music. MP3s were, being circulated like crazy.
Yeah.
Digital was coming of age, and record labels were not. They basically fired most A&Rs, and so record labels were not cutting huge checks like they used to be. So very interesting time for the music industry. Oh, while I was in college too, I guess it's a trifecta of things. I wish I could have thought of this more organized, but like working with Jarrod in college too. So like if you have Jarrod on here, he'll tell you some interesting stories about his entrepreneur efforts. And like I was loosely affiliated with some of these, but he would like start these like massive parties and just basically syndicate these massive parties in Gainesville. And I would be on the side, like working on the technology part of them, like, creating a Flash implementation for a website, or like
Yeah.
generating buzz across like AIM channels and stuff like that, getting people to come to these things. So that's how we started first working together. We knew each other through college. Well, even earlier than that, but we worked together really closely in college and started to work on some of these entrepreneur efforts, like, starting in college and then outside of college.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot that's interesting there. Even in Birmingham, there's another guy named Jeff Gale, or he used to be in Birmingham. I think he's in Chattanooga or something like that now, but he started a company called Ticket Biscuit. And I think the onus for him starting that business as well was he had a band and needed to be able to sell tickets, and was like making websites for lots of bands and stuff like that. And it's funny, like, that kind of entertainment segment created so many different SaaS products over the years. Ticket Biscuit was one that comes to mind, but even if you think of other like ticketing systems, event management systems, there's all of these people that I knew that either came out of like building websites for churches or building websites for bands that ended up building a lot of software, right? And I always find it interesting that those are part of the kind of like, I guess, aperture that created the software experience that we see today. And I always try to think about nowadays the different things that we're seeing today that are going to generate those things in the future. I mean, I saw a thing the other day where this YouTuber that I had seen a few times that had gotten a pretty big following began to use Chat GPT and a couple of other artificial intelligence tools that create media content to create like basically a deep fake of he was a Amazon, Prime delivery guy that was stealing packages. And he created like a deep fake of a news organization covering it. And then all these other news organizations started covering it and started getting like, cease and desist letters from Amazon from it. And like those moments in time make me think, okay, so what's happening now that will shape the future of how people develop technology? And I think we look back with a lot of reverence to the past, of those moments that it was very clear and very obvious that new products needed to be developed and technology could be applied to those new products. But it's difficult in the moment to realize the opportunity, right? So like when you guys were starting out with ProctorU, what was the moment in which you realized the opportunity? Like when was it that you were like, oh, there might be something here. Someone said yes. Someone said this is the right direction. Someone maybe paid you. What was that moment like?
Yeah, so just going back to the, being able to find these opportunities in general, what I've realized from talking to lots of different founders and lots of different entrepreneurs, and I know even yourself, it's something that we talk about is like you find these opportunities in the moments of everyday life. These are problems, right? Problems that need to be solved. I talk to people in that regard. It's like, all right, you're having a hard time. Like, I want to start this business. I don't know what to do. Like, I have a lot of different ideas. Well, start with what resonates with you the most. Like, look at your day-to-day life in a 24-hour span. I promise you, you're going to find something in that 24 hours where like, wow, like I really had a problem doing that. That really sucked. Like, I bet you I could probably solve that in a better way. Or you're doing something or using a product that you use every single day and you just don't even think about it. You just use it every single day. Like, I do this every single day because I have to, because it's just part of the habit, but it really is not that great. There are so many different opportunities like that just in your day-to-day life. You don't have to think about, well, how do I create the next Google or how do I create the next Chat GPT? It's like, it doesn't really happen like that. It just happens through the course of just everyday plain old life. You're going to find these opportunities. And that segues me into, ProctorU. And so that pretty much was a culmination of, this was 2008, 2007, 2008. The stock market had just imploded. Financial crisis had just happened. People were losing their jobs, homes, and so forth. So you know what people were doing? They're going back to school. They were doubling down on investing in themselves. They're investing in education. And so the problem there was that, okay, a lot of the content had shifted online, but when it comes time to take that test, where do you go? What do you do? Oh, you still got to go back to class. You got to like fly to campus, or you got to like find a proctor. You got to go to a library. It's just super inconvenient. And so Jarrod was working at an online college at the time, and we were creating another adjacent type of product. And the students were always like, this online college thing is great and all, but man, this test taking process really sucks.
Yeah.
Like, there's got to be something more convenient when it comes to taking that test. And there really wasn't. There was no other solution at the time. And it's rare when you encounter those particular types of situations. And when you do, it's a matter of being able to seize on that opportunity and execute on it and get something out there, start that product validation process, start testing it, and just start working the problem, right? And then it's a matter of putting together a growth strategy. And ours was called Plant the Flag. And so we just wanted to get as many people as we can using the product. And once we did that, it hit critical mass and it started to take off like crazy.
Well, that's interesting because I remember going into y'all's office and I remember, and maybe this was the plant the flag strategy with all the pennants that were on the walls. It felt like that might be what you're alluding to there.
That's
tell me about
exactly
how
what it
you
was.
guys got to this like plant the flag thing.
So that's the mastermind of Jarrod too. That's why Jarrod and I work really well together, is because we're both visionaries, but like he focuses on really good on vision, and he comes up with these incredible types of marketing, sales and marketing strategies. And me, I'm like an operational executor, get it done. Like, I make things real, right? So that's where we play really well together. He can come up with these incredible things, know how to sell them, know how to market them. And regardless of how maybe seemingly impossible something might sound, I normally can come up with a way to make it happen.
Yeah.
That's like how we play really well together. And so he came up with that strategy of being able to, all right, so a lot of people will say, oh, I really need to land this massive customer.
Yeah.
But you know what? It takes a lot of time and effort and resources to land, and even, experience, knowledge, and know-how to land a massive customer. Once you get into that door of that, whatever that Fortune 500 company, do you know how to sell into that? Probably not, but you can sell like hand to hand, door to door, like person to person, right? And if you sell enough of those, Well, you know what? It's going to get the attention of that Fortune 500 one day.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was our strategy early on. Let's just go sell to students, sell to professors, sell to classes, sell to, colleges, sell to universities, eventually sell to systems, and then sell to corporates, so we just moved on up the line.
Mm-hmm.
And that strategy worked really well in that particular business. I don't recommend, that's not for everybody. And depending upon the markets that you're in, that's not the best strategy. But in our particular case, where it was just a land grab of opportunity, you want to try to plant your flag in as many different pieces as you possibly can. And that's what really worked for us.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me, a bunch of what you've said reminds me of what we're going through with the two companies that we've been launching. One of them is Colony, which is a managed services provider that builds on top of Kubernetes. And most of those like companies that we'd be talking to would be large enterprises that have long sales cycles. And for a startup, a long sales cycle can absolutely destroy the business because you don't have enough capital to keep that business going. And then
Right.
with HustleMob, I think one of the things that you mentioned were you guys were working in an adjacent solution to the online test proctoring thing. And, Jarrod was in the industry with online schooling. And, with us, what we're working on HustleMob, the initial idea was to create a Venmo alternative for early stage businesses and early stage side hustlers. And along the way, we realized that one, there was a banking crisis going on, so you can't disregard macroeconomic issues that are happening, right? Which make it very difficult to do a banking level startup. But then we started having all these conversations with the people in the periphery of payments, right? And realized that there was a lot of really bad software that was developed for your average merchant. Like if you go and talk to your person who you buy bagels from, that's a local bagel shop, or you go talk to, let's say, Cahaba Cycles or one of these places that's near you, that's really a local vendor, they've likely got a local merchant services group that's managing all of their payments and transactions. And you go start looking into the software that they're selling them and it's all garbage, And so it's like, hey, there's a cool opportunity here for us to do something different, but us being adjacent or at least in that same area and really thinking about that problem helped us figure out that there's another place that we could potentially build software at that maybe has less barriers to entry, enables us to go knock on doors, as opposed to us have to go through Google or Facebook or large ad spends, right, to be able to get to the end customer. We can go really target it and have conversations with people. And a thing that I'm good at is having a conversation with somebody and selling them on something that we're doing. And so I think we got some pretty sage advice from Bill Smith over at Shipped a couple weeks ago, which was find a business that you can go sell by having a phone call or a LinkedIn message, because those two places, there's no gatekeeper at the moment still, right? There's nobody that's saying you can't talk to that person without paying me, right? And so that's what we started doing. So, I mean, I think those are great lessons. And then I guess the last one is I always follow David Sachs, and he's kind of on the conservative side of startups, right? And so he's in the All In podcast world. He's the token conservative on the podcast. And I love him because he's very practical in his execution, and his execution is like, that no one can doubt how great he's been over the years at being an operating partner in a startup or a growth business. And one of the things that you were talking about is this bottom up strategy of getting the people that needed to care about the thing, that needed to use the end user, not necessarily the intermediary, which may be the organization or the corporation or the college institution to use it, the actual end user to use it and find value, and then let them tell that story a bit to you, to the overarching entity that's going to buy this software, right? And I think that
Mhm.
bottom up approach is the same thing that David Sachs did with Yammer. And it's been one of those things that I've seen over the years work really, really well, because there's not an impediment between you and that user. There's no like corporate entity that is the buffer between you and the purchase of the product, or the usage of the product for that matter. It's just having a conversation. And I love that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. I mean, it sounds like some great lessons learned. And it sounds like also when you were, doing the band thing, that was the least risky time to learn the lesson that you don't want to run
Mhm.
away from your customers, right? You want to stay where they are, right? I think that's one of the things that if I could encourage anybody that's in a college or early stage scenario is like, find the people that love you and stay next to them, and continue to foster the behavior that you think is going to be more beneficial for that customer base, and not try to seek out the shiny object, a long ways away, because, LA is a thing out there, and it's a strange entity until you get there and realize you're the only one there, and you're all doing the same thing as well. Everybody that's there. So tell me a little bit more about what you've been doing lately, what your, mentoring looks like, what your role at Techstars is, and what you're looking to get out of that.
Like I said, back in 2020, after having this exit, it is just been sole focus, just helping people and helping the right people. I realized through my journey at ProctorU that I sacrificed a lot. I think everybody has a story of what they had to sacrifice. It's not all like glitter and glamour and like all this, stuff like that. I mean, it takes something from you.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that it took from me initially was my health, and then it was time with my family. I sacrificed a ton of time with my family, and I regret that a little bit. Maybe not just a little, maybe a lot actually, quite
Yeah.
honestly. And what I want to do now, and what I've been doing now, is dedicating that prioritization towards, still health, but also family, and making sure that I don't miss some of those opportunities that I missed with my son, and don't miss them with my daughter. And so the fact that I'm coming out here and testifying to that, like, will help me stay honest, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, you said that on that podcast, you better do it, you know? And I'll be
Yeah.
honest with you, now that I've decided to take this role as a managing director at Techstars, I find myself falling into some of the familiar patterns of just hustling and working hard and just grinding for hours and hours. And I just, I, I even now, I mean, to this day, I need to make sure that I don't fall into those types of those things. But it is just awesome to be able to do what I'm doing in this particular role, and to know that, I really have an opportunity to help as many people as I possibly can, leveraging this platform of an ecosystem and framework that Techstars kind of enables, to find a company that's actually truly aligned with what your mission is, like being able to give first with zero expectation return, putting founders first, and just being part of that is really, really cool. And as long as the mission stays the same and we continue to do what we say we do, and we continue marching forward, like, I foresee myself here for quite a while, and it is great. To being able to help a particular founder, help startups, and just kind of see them grow over time, and to take a piece of information or a hard lesson that you've learned in the past and being able to share it with them, and then see their eyes like light up and be like, oh crap, like, that is really cool. I've really never experienced that before until, just recently, just, kind of getting out of being an operator myself, and just getting out there and helping people, and then seeing that effect is incredible. So those who are out there, who are just heads down, trying to make this thing work, if you take a second just to give back to those that are trying to do the thing like you're doing, or those that are on their way up just where you were, maybe even just a couple weeks ago, and just help them, man, it opens up your eyes, and just kind of really shows you that, hey, there's a lot out there, and being able to give back is all part of it. I mean, I think we're all trying to do the best that we can. We're trying to make this world a better place, and definitely, if you can be a part of that, for sure. Regardless of where we arrive or how we got there, I think one of the things that makes us successful is the fact that we acknowledge that we're constantly learning and getting better. The lessons that I've learned in my past can help others, but they don't necessarily prepare me for everything that's coming up into my future. Same with you. And I love the fact that you're still reaching out to other founders and other startups and trying to help them along their way. So you're like on that path, which is awesome. And it's hard to see like you doing these types of things. Like me, same thing. Like when you get into these roles and you're kind of in the mode operating, it's almost like these blinders come on to like the obvious things that and you even talk about. You're like, oh, well, kind of talked about that on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, but I find myself in that situation. I didn't listen to
Oh
my
yeah.
own advice.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting how that happens when you're just kind of in the moment, just operating, executing, and you get into this tactical mindset and you don't have the time to zoom out and think, oh, well, I'm in this situation. I've been in this situation before. This is how I handled it in the past. Maybe I should probably do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really cool that, you're taking the time out to operate in all the different businesses that you're involved in and be able to give back and take the time to like, zoom out a little bit and seek advice of others. So that's really cool. That kind of is a testament to what you got going on. So that's awesome.
I appreciate it. I think one thing that's been interesting about the podcast is I had one last week with a podcast called Startup Hustle, which is funny, which is kind of similar to what we did, but they've been doing it for a lot longer and it is a lot bigger podcast. And one of the things that we talked about was, we made a mistake when we were doing the project we're working on right now with HustleMob, which was we built before we found the audience to build it for, right? For the problem that the discrete problem that we wanted to solve. It wasn't apparent to us, but we're builders, so we build, right? I think being able to have these conversations unlocks some of those obvious moments a bit at a higher frequency, because I think what you want to be able to do is make what is this what do you
Like
triangulations,
adjustments, movements,
yeah, micro
yeah,
adjustments, right?
iterations. Yeah,
Exactly. Instead of making these big leaps, right? Because each one of those big leaps has inherent risk in it that's significantly higher than the small little micro adjustment, right? And so in our recent
right.
micro adjustment was having conversations with different types of customers, right? And understanding that there's a macro environment that's different than when we wanted to start the business. And now we've got to figure out who the next people we have to talk to that may be more advantageous to us continuing to move that project forward. And a lot of it comes down to our ability to be resilient during that time and not
Right.
quit on that we want to solve a problem, right? And we want to make sure that this problem is very discrete and is very wanted and needed by the end consumer that's going to benefit from our solving that problem. And so
Right.
I think it's interesting that this podcast has helped a bit with that, just personally for me. I think a lot of times when we get into creating content like this, we think about what the outcome is for that content. And like right now, LinkedIn distribution is the worst thing in the history of the world. Like you go post a message on LinkedIn, you get like 3 people that see the thing. And so it's like, that can't be the metric of success in this for me, because if that was the metric of success, I would have quit weeks ago doing this. The metric
Right.
of success has to be, am I getting any value out of it? Are the people that I'm talking to getting any value out of it? And then tangentially, are the people that will listen to this getting any value out of it? I think another thing that you said that was really important, and I actually learned this from a influencer, which was like Gary Vaynerchuk, and I used to listen to him a decent amount because I liked that it seemed as though he was always in movement, and that movement was leading to progress for him. And that generally that message resonated well with me. But I think one of the things that he used to say is you're always going to have to sacrifice something. What are you willing to sacrifice? Right. And At times it's very difficult because you have to sacrifice things that you won't be able to get back. Now, time is a given. You're not going to be able to get the time back, right? But the time also associated with family, friends, faith, fitness, health, all of those things have kind of cascading effects, right? And so, I've struggled with this with my son and daughter, trying to figure out, what time am I willing to sacrifice? What is the value that I'm giving up? And what is the cascading effect on them that then is going to lead to, emotional feelings for me, emotional feelings for them that are different. And I've come to that realization that there are some moments in time I cannot sacrifice, right? I cannot sacrifice not going to my daughter's volleyball games and supporting her, right? Like, I cannot sacrifice not taking my son to taekwondo practice because I know he's learning discipline there, and that discipline will have a cascading effect that has way more value than anything that I'm going to do on a keyboard, right? I think it's important to note that no matter what, there's going to be a sacrifice that you're going to go throughout, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to start a business. You just have to set some of those boundaries around what isn't up for debate on the sacrificial table of progress for our family or for yourself or for your individual aspirations, and what is on the table, right? Sometimes it has to be the things that you actually like doing. Like, I like playing video games, but I can't play video games all the time, because if I play video games all the time, I don't get to make progress in our business, right? And so that thing has to get sacrificed at a point in time. So I appreciate all that. I think it's sage advice from somebody that has gone through it. And like you said, in these mentoring environments, when you're an entrepreneur in residence or when you're a managing director and you're having to engage with a bunch of people that haven't went through these trials and tribulations in life, or they maybe have, but have forgotten what the impact of those were on their life at that time. I think it's stuff that they need to hear, and they need to hear over and over and over again, because as people, we tend to have short-term memories around some of the things that were negatively affecting us in life, or the things that positively affected us. You have to have 10 times more of those to overwhelm a negative interaction. And so having someone there to kind of course correct, help guide, help move people in the right direction is such a valuable resource. I've always struggled with in my career, having good mentors or people that will pour into me. And it's been difficult, because then you have to learn all those lessons on your own. And I've always been very, from a distance, anyone that has a great mentor or someone that they reference as a mentor, I've always been very jealous of that, because it's always been something that I found that's difficult. Because a lot of times when you're the lone wolf kind of doing the thing, or you're executing as a consultant for people, you don't get to build up those kind of like very deep relationships with people that you work with that may be, in a hierarchical, higher position that are willing to pour into you, because at that time there is a value exchange. And then when you remove yourself from that situation, you continue that relationship. And now you've got a mentor, right? I've never had those positions because I didn't really take jobs that much, So I think it's something that anyone that's willing to dedicate that time, many of the people that are willing to dedicate that time are people that, have faith that there needs to be a better outcome in the future, and they want to continue to push people forward to have those better outcomes and make a better world in the future. So I appreciate that about you. I guess my next question is, and these will be in some of these kind of like just tangential questions that will help other people find something to kind of latch on to and move themselves forward. So tell me about a documentary that's affected your life, whether it's business or not. But tell me about something that is a documentary that you've enjoyed throughout your life.
Like a documentary. I'm thinking, if I think of just things that I've read or anything just most recently that continue to influence me and give me motivation, is I keep on thinking of David Goggins.
Oh yeah.
He I see his stuff. He is a Navy SEAL, came from nothing, against all odds kind of person that, just grinds so hard, works so hard to just make whatever is in his mind a reality against what any naysayer or anybody would say against him. And he just lives this ethos of just, of embodying the sheer will of moving mountains with your mind and just mind over matter. And that is really motivating to me. I mean, there's so many times when I'm thinking about things that I'm doing, if either if it's work or if it's during a workout, training for a race, or anything that matter, I'm like, what would that guy do? In this particular situation,
Yeah.
he would suck it up. He would keep on going,
Yeah.
and that just like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that, for sure. That's what's great about this world and the internet and the ability to access all of these types of influences out there. I take little bits and pieces of things like that, from all you mentioned Gary, all these influencers out there. And no one's perfect, and no one has like the end all be all message, with the exception maybe God, obviously. But
Yeah.
to take like you can take like anecdotes from all these types of influencers, all these people, and just like learn from them. And that's what I encourage people to do. Is you can find inspiration in so many things. I try to find inspiration in just about every day, any kind of everyday life situation that I get into. And if you can come and approach everyday living, and anyone you interact with is an opportunity to be able to learn from them as they can learn from you, I think that really that helps me open up. And just in general communication with people, like never think that regardless of how young or how old or how different or how anyone could be, that there's not something to be learned from that person.
Yeah.
And I think if you approach, like I've approached life like that, and I always get something out of it. I don't care who you are, rich, poor, young, old, whatever that may be. Somebody who doesn't even like you can learn the most from people that don't like you too. I mean, I've learned a lot from people that don't like me.
Yeah, me
So
too. No doubt about that.
some of the best learnings. But I mean, if you can approach life like that, that's why when I think about things that, or in particular people or documentaries or anything that's inspired me, it's just like I try to look for those types of instances in just everyday life. But
Yeah.
just going
No,
back
I
to the
mean,
one that just keeps on, like in my back of my mind, I see like David Goggins like
yeah.
running and like talking about something motivating me. Like, yeah, I want to do that.
I'd say 90% of my YouTube shorts right now are David Goggins YouTube shorts. Like I
Yeah.
get like a mini documentary, something like 15 to 30 seconds at a time from just a sequence of David Goggins saying, like get up and do something, like
Yeah.
he's one of those guys that his story is so compelling from where he came from. And I think if you really want to see what that looks like, it's the manifestation of what he looked like before and where he is now, and his ability to
Mhm.
push himself through situations where he's probably pushed himself to the brink of death more frequently than most people will ever experience at one time, right?
Right.
And then also to see that he was like, looked like a 300-pound, giant guy at some point in time that has willed himself into being this like fit, focused human being that can push his body to the extreme limits that very few people have the mental fortitude to do. I mean, talk about resilience. Watching that guy helps embolden that ideal or that sense of resilience in your own mind. So
Yeah.
I can definitely relate. I haven't met David before. I've met Jocko and a few of the other guys before, but I've never met David
Well, that's
before.
cool.
And he seems like one that would be fun to meet, but like also be kind of terrifying because he'd look through your soul in that moment and say, "You're not doing enough," So
No, he talks about taking souls. That's one of the things that he does. Like he talks about that on races, like where he'll get in somebody's mind and he'll be like, "Oh, I'm going to take that guy's soul."
yeah, yeah.
So
I
that's
appreciate
funny.
it. It's like this killer instinct that's to the,
Yeah.
10th degree. Well, so
I
on
think,
that vein, what about your favorite book? And like, try to think something business oriented or something that would help an entrepreneur, but what's your favorite book?
man, I've got so many different favorite books that I've just read. Like, for example, you were just talking about, well, there's two things that come to mind. So just really quick segue back. One of the things that I think David Goggins talks about in just this, if you could summarize it, is just doing something, right? Just don't settle into inaction. Just like get up and just do it. Right. It doesn't matter if it's perfect. It doesn't matter if it's like whatever it is, just get up and do it. And I think you referred to it as like a mistake. Well, I just created this product and I didn't really understand like the customer at the time or whatever. But the fact that you got up and you actually just did something,
Mm-hmm.
that like beats 90% of people that sitting there like, oh, well, I don't know what to do. They
Mm-hmm.
don't just do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact that you just went out and did it, and then you learned that it wasn't like exactly what you wanted to do, and you focused in on refining that. And then that leads me into the book thing and the other thing that you talked about. And I think we called it like iterative steps or little adjustments or whatever. But Jim Collins, he talks about firing bullets at things, right? So when you fire bullets at things, you're like firing these little tiny little bullets at a target in the hopes of like being able to hit it. And the good thing about doing that is that you can hone in on that target before you launch a missile at it or fire a cannon or something like that, right? So you're just focusing on just hitting it, right? Once you hit it, oh, you're gonna like spend all that time and effort to like just destroying that thing and just winning, right? And the other thing you talked about too, and is that's part of this, and he talks about this also, it's called 20-mile marches.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're trying to go somewhere, you're trying to like hit an objective, go to a destination, whatever that may be. Like, yeah, you know that you're traveling thousands upon thousands of miles, but you need to plan it in accordance to just smaller segments, 20-mile marches, as Jim Collins talks about, so that when you go 20 miles and you stop and you think about it, like, am I headed in the right direction? Am I
Mm-hmm.
doing everything I need to do? Let me check my supplies. Let me make sure that I'm still good on this journey.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of talked about that too, and like being able to course correct. But and circling all this back around, like Jim Collins, like a lot of his books, really great in terms of just kind of like this business mindset. I love the Simon Sinek books when it comes to just how to think in terms of leadership and working with people. I love the book Atomic Habits for like being able to get your mind into thinking about, well, if I want to be able to um, do something or start something new, and it's always hard to start something new, but that Atomic Habit book basically it gets you into thinking, well, if you associate that new habit with something that you already do, you can inject it into your daily life and you just kind of grow it from there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a method that I use for a lot of things. Another great book that I've kind of like really lived by when it comes to interacting with people is the 48 Laws of Power.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Unfortunately, that book is like it could be used for both good and evil. So
Yeah.
you just kind of have to like read it with a very open mindset. Take a look at the different examples in there, and you can't let yourself be consumed by those 48 laws, because if you do, you will most likely become an evil person. Like it was, you know. But the thing is like you can see that those laws being used against you in a lot of cases,
Yeah.
and the book describes on countermeasures on how to detect and how to like work around those types of things when people are applying those things to you.
Mm-hmm.
So that has been like an invaluable book. And there's a whole bunch of them. I mean, I've rattled off a couple, but there's just a ton of different books that I've read over the years, and I constantly try to read new books all the time that provide those types of business insights, life insights, and those have guided my journey, and they continue to guide my journey on this in this life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I appreciate that. I think all of those books are books that I've read either snippets from or read the entirety of the text. And each one of those has provided some, just like you said, some snippet that has resonated throughout life with me. And I appreciate it because I think a lot of people don't know where to start, and I think what most people don't realize, especially in the David Goggins world, is making the commitment to doing something, putting pen to paper, and actually going out and executing on something, getting yourself in the first uncomfortable situation of the many that will come is the actual beginning of all that, right? And I think once you kind of get over that hurdle, I remember like the first time I ever pitched a startup, and I have to be very thankful for my mother-in-law for this. I went to I went to, what is it called? Venture Atlanta, one of the first Venture Atlantas that was ever thrown. And this is like a regional event for venture capital. And I went there with this idea on a tablet, and I hadn't even like been coding for that long. And my mother-in-law actually went with me because she wanted to kind of like check out the space as well and also be supportive. She's a a corporate leader. I was like kind of standing on the sides, not knowing what to do, and she just brought some random dude over for me to tell him and pitch him the idea to put me in the first uncomfortable of the many uncomfortable situations that I was going to be in. And once I got through that first uncomfortable position, it was like I just needed to tell the story at that point because I needed it to be better the next time. I knew I'd stunk at it, and so I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. And I'm forever thankful for her for putting me in that position and helping me realize that I think to get something started, you have to kind of seek out those uncomfortable moments because they help you kind of push through the difficult times. So we're wrapping this up. Tell me about where anyone can get in touch with you. This is the moment to kind of proselytize anything that you think is important. So so let me know where anyone can get in touch with you.
Yeah. So Justin, I'm still all about just helping people, giving back. If anybody, your audience, anybody that just wants to ping an idea off me, get my thoughts on something, feel free to reach out. mattjaeh.com, all my social links, LinkedIn, all that stuff is there. So feel free to reach out anytime. And I'm here to help you. Just let me know.
Are you guys signing up a new cohort right now, or applications closed or open right now?
Yeah, so we are extremely busy going through applications to try to find, like I said, 12 of the best and brightest energy tech, climate tech, and adjacent type startups that are out there. So that's what I'm busy doing until cool. September.
So if there's anybody in the audience that's listening that is in the climate tech, in the energy technology space, or is just a startup founder that wants to find Matt, go check him out on LinkedIn. Go find him at mattjaeh.com. And then I really appreciate everybody listening to this and Matt coming on. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This has been the Everyday Hustle podcast. My goal with the Everyday Hustle podcast is to inspire you to go out and do something, build something, whether it be a traditional business or a big technology startup. And my goal is to make sure that we build software that empowers these businesses to grow. And so if you are interested in that, go over to HustleMob.com, pre-register your username, as well as if you want to get in touch with me, I'm Billy at HustleMob.com. I'm always available. And I just encourage everyone to keep hustling every day. Have a great one. See y'all.